Corey,
Yes, Josh.
let's talk a little bit about the story this week before we go to War Corner.
Let's do it.
I was going to go into War Corner, and I remember we didn't touch the story. Cayde, fucking things up again.
Yeah, that Cayde.
We knew this was coming when she wasn't part of the actual ritual and we saw Gaul appear behind her. The fact that she thought she could go fight the Nightmare on her own, though, was kind of funny. I'll admit, I laughed a little bit. I laughed just a little bit. I don't understand what her logic and reasoning was here, but I am intrigued that Gaul is her nightmare. We're starting to learn a little bit more about the history there between her and Gaul. I think that's an interesting way to bring him back into the fold because they kind of both led the rebellion against Callus.
Right.
Callus needed to be deposed, and then, you had the Red Legion and you had everybody else who was under Cayde. We know that the first scouts of the Red Legion appeared in our system to the distress call on the Dreadnought during the Taken King, and then Gaul himself, of course, shows up in the city. And I think there's been some really poignant dialogue where, we talk about forgiveness and we talk about, moving on, and there's been some exchanges. That's one of the few things I really like about this public event is all the dialogue we get in it about the characters and their motivations. Zavala and Cayde have a really good exchange, though, where they're talking about how many Guardians, the Cabal have killed and how many Cabal the Guardians killed during the Red War, and that they are not each of those. Like, Zavala is not the one who was out there slaying the Cabal, and Cayde is not the one who was killing the Guardians.
Right.
That we are not responsible for all the mistakes of our kind, that you cannot hold everybody responsible for the mistakes of a few. Right. And I think it's been a really powerful message throughout this whole season of us, going through and conquering traumas. We see Crow accept that he is not he has parts of Uldren in him, but he is not Uldren. We see Zavala accept that his wife is dead, but that she will always be with her, and Hakim will always be with him. Right. And I feel like with Cayde, we're going towards Gaul has been banished from her mind, but the lessons that he taught her will always stay with her. Because we've already gotten that kind of dialogue, right? We've already seen some of that, like, him calling her weak and saying, like, you've forgotten everything I ever taught you. And if you go read, some of the lore from this season, specifically from the dungeon, it's all about Callus and Cayde when Cayde was growing up. And I assume that eventually there will be some lore pages that will dive into, probably next week's, honestly, for the main storyline that will dive into Gaul and Cayde's relationship. That feels like something that we're going to have to reconcile with, not just in next week's story, but at the end of the season also. That feels like something that's going to keep coming back up until we're done with Callus for good.
Right.
And I do think that the only reason that her nightmare is not Callus is because Callus is not technically dead. But the news that he may be fusing with the Leviathan is alarming.
Yeah, that's pretty,
That's not great.
No, it is not.
It's very, Hal in 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's very, very similar to that. I feel like he's just going to, like, autonomously start killing everybody on the Leviathan at some point. But we talked about it last week. There's been a true coalition of this merry band of characters that we've assembled. Like, there are fallen troops assisting the Cabal with their splicing technology here, which is interesting to me. But we're seeing the Aragorn spread also, and it's now spread into the Helm. Who could have ever seen this coming? Everybody.
I don't know.
Also, Bungie totally spoiled this a few days into the season when they showed one of the emotes and the entire Helm was covered in it. So I kind of expect it to happen next week.
Yeah.
It's pretty great. Like, at this point, we know that there will be one more step to the quest line, and I think we're all kind of feeling that it's going to be held until after Solstice. That they'll give us part 6 next week, which will be getting rid of the Nightmare of Gaul, and then part 7 feels like it will come up as soon as Solstice is done, because we'll only have a couple weeks left in the season at that point. Kind of feels like an epilogue, almost like a Season of the Splicer event to end off. Corey, I've become a believer that this may be the end for Eris. This season itself may be the end for her.
You think so?
It would be a bold move.
Bold move, Cotton.
Maybe not this season, but I think that this season could knock her out of the story for quite a while.
Yeah.
And then something will happen to her as Lightfall occurs. Something will happen.
I mean, it's probably time to step away from Eris for a little bit anyway, right? She's been
not only for a little bit. I think for good. Eris kind of became the character that the story latched onto after Cayde, subconsciously.
Yeah.
We've talked about it before, but I was going back through and kind of remembering and going like, man, Eris really had a big impact on this story. You know, she is the instigator of the events in The Dark Below and in The Taken King. You know, we know what she was doing during the events of House of Wolves. She was coming up with the plan to ambush Oryx with Mara.
Mm-hmm.
Her and Mara were already preparing for that.
Right.
And then Eris disappeared weeks before the tower was hit by Gaul.
Right.
She left. We've lost. The Touch of Malice has been lost. We don't know where that is, so that's not good. We were talking last week about King's Fall. I mean, hey, that could come into play. Like, that's how Oryx has been resurrected, because that's a piece of his spirit that's still alive.
Right. Just
like Whisper of the Worm is technically Zol incarnate.
Right.
There's plenty of avenues there, right? And then if we're going by when things get vaulted, I think you can pretty safely assume that the moon would be next. Because I do think we're leaving Earth behind. I don't know that Earth necessarily gets vaulted, but I could see them pulling something like, the moon and the tower are getting vaulted. We'll leave the EDZ and the Cosmodrome.
Yeah.
But everything else, but they're going to be changed. Like, we're gonna change the overlay of them a little bit unless you're in the strikes.
The EDZ, man, I'm sorry, just get rid of it at this point.
So I would be ready for them to get rid of it, but you have to look at how much stuff is in both of those, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And they've converted all of the EDZ lost sectors to be legendary lost sectors, which I don't think is that bad. They've said that they can do that in under a day now. The Cosmodrome, I would say get rid of, but then you have to retool New Light again.
Yeah.
My problem
to be fair though, New Light needs retooled anyway.
It does, and I don't think it's going to happen until Goliath, which we're going to save our Goliath theories until episode. We're going to talk about Goliath on episode 100. Yeah. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. I want to talk about it in depth again when we got more people here.
Right.
When we talk about the future of Destiny, but the EDZ and Nessus have long been rumored to be going away, and I just can't see either one of them or even the Cosmodrome going away now, because the new battlegrounds that we got this last season are going to go into the rotation.
Right.
They're presumably going into the Vanguard rotation.
Mm-hmm.
And why keep those areas? Because those are massive patrol zones that you just basically spice up for those missions. Why get rid of a total of like 6 missions for that? I'd rather just call it a day and get rid of the moon one and say, forget it and move on.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think the moon is pretty safe at this point.
Really? I see. Like, I think if anything gets vaulted, it's going to be the moon. So the Dreaming City.
That's what I said.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant like it's safe from getting vaulted.
Oh no, I'm saying I think it's pretty safe that it is the moon at this point.
I've seen theories that the Dreaming City will go away. That if we break the curse, because they don't want to break the gameplay loop of it, it'll be broken in the final events before Lightfall, which I could completely see happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be okay with that, because I think with the Dreaming City, you would lose one of the coolest zones. But I think for them to vault that a year after creating a special pack that just has Last Wish, the Shattered Throne, and stuff like that in it would just be the ultimate, we're going to rally against Bungie for this now move. And I would kind of support people doing that at that point, because I think it's ridiculous. You'd be vaulting one of the best raids, even though it is by far and away the longest raid in the franchise.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I feel like when you finish the Dreaming City story, though, and you break the curse, you're going to have to vault the Dreaming City.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to give people advance warning. Like, if you're going to do that, you need to tell us by the time that Season 3 starts at the latest.
Yeah, but they've already shown that they can, like, they could totally put that raid in, like, the Legends section, right?
They can, and that's the next thing I wanted to get to is, I think if they did that and the Shattered Throne would likely get moved to there, because they don't exist in patrol areas, really.
Yeah. Well,
I
even
think that
even like even like Vault though, like you look at the Return of Vault, it's still just that one little area of Venus, you
right,
know?
and that's what I'm saying. Like you start Last Wish off in that open area in the Dreaming City, but they'll probably just put like invisible walls up.
Right.
Like you can't leave the area or go into the lost sectors or anything, and I'd be okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
Could see that happening. I know that. See, like I feel if you keep that, then you definitely vault the Moon and Garden of Salvation, because I think Garden is just like universally detested.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody would cry over Vault and Nightmare Hunts and things like that going away. And yet again, if you were to do that, oh, we could still keep the Scarlet Keep in rotation because it doesn't use any assets. We could still leave that as a strike. You can't leave the area anyways already in that strike.
Yeah.
And then we'll just move Pit of Heresy over. Right. But at some point, you have to start trimming the fat. So like maybe it's something where like we keep Pit of Heresy, but we let the Shattered Throne go away. We keep Last Wish, but we trade out Garden of Salvation.
Yeah.
Because when they have to create those expansive original spaces for the raids, that also eats up a lot of the space in the game.
Right.
I feel like those are pretty safe bets. I think after that, though, like, because their explanation for their in-game explanation for the content vault is if they vault the tower and the moon but not Earth, there's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Like that really doesn't make any sense, but at the same time, I don't think that they can vault the EDZ or the Cosmodrome just because of how many strikes are. There's 5 strikes between those two. There's about
could you
9-10 lost sectors. You just can't vault that stuff.
I mean, I know this would not make sense from a gameplay standpoint, but you think they could keep the strikes in there, but just vault the zones as like patrol areas? I mean, I know that doesn't really make sense because like you look at Lake of Shadows. I would say
yes, but like Lake of Shadows starts obliquely right there in the middle of the patrol area, and then I mean, Arms Dealer does also technically. It starts out in the ship, and then you're out there on the ground in the Deadlands area. Like, you have that, and then I think the battlegrounds are what completely throw the argument out the window because those are exclusively in patrol areas.
Yeah.
Right. That gets really tricky. I saw an argument for getting rid of Nessus, and I was like, you can't do Nessus either. You got 2 battlegrounds, you got 4 strikes there.
Yeah.
Like, as badly as I think Nessus and EDZ need to be retooled or go away for even like a year. Jesus, man. Like, I don't think you can do it. I would like to see if we can trade out and then, like, get a full planet back, though. Because I think introducing any more new planets probably isn't going to work.
Well, could you think they could bring back zones on Mars?
That was going to kind of be my next solution is, especially if they get rid of the tower, just make the Enclave, like, a new zone. Make that, like, the new tower of sorts.
Yeah.
I do think the capital ship is probably going to be everything. Like, if capital ships pan out, like last year's leak suggested, if capital ships become a thing, then or the Helm, I fully expect us to be able to do crafting from there. Like, crafting is going to have to be majorly reworked, right? Yeah. But as we look to the future, and I know this started out as the storyline, and, you know, we've definitely gotten away from that now as to what can be vaulted. Kind of circling back, I think they're going to be reluctant to vault anything that has to do with Cayde or Mithrax for the immediate future, because Mithrax's story essentially has already been vaulted. Yeah. With Splicer going away and with the Elixir Hoarder going away and things like that, I don't think that they're going to be in any rush to say, well, we should just get rid of everything that Cayde is in now, because I don't feel like Cayde is dying anytime soon.
Yeah.
If she does, it'll be in, like, the lead up to the final shape. But I think that, like, Lightfall, to me, I think, like, makes the most sense if you look at it and say, well, obviously something is going to happen during the course of the campaign that rocks the Guardians. Whether that's the Traveler being truly captured, you know, like Savathun was trying to do. Yeah. Or, like, gets captured by the Witness. Our connection to the light gets... I really don't want another story of, oh, we have to restore our light. I think that's stupid.
Yeah.
Especially after getting all 3 new subclasses, I really don't want to do that again.
Right.
But, like, us kind of fighting back, like, at some point we have to suffer some losses, right? Like the only real loss we've ever suffered was during the Red War, and then we had
Cayde.
Cayde. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. We really haven't lost anything since Cayde.
Yeah. I mean, Osiris, I guess technically a little bit, but I mean, there's always a potential he comes back because he's in a coma or whatever, right? I mean, not that he was as big as a player as Cayde or anything, but they tried to make him that way, at least. Seem that way.
Yeah, I mean, like, here's the thing. I would be much more broken up about Osiris if we had actually seen Osiris's full power. Like, the fact that he loses Sagira off screen, and it's almost entirely because Marina Baccarin they couldn't pay her enough money to come back.
Yeah, but they could have recast her.
They could have recast, but at that point, then why do you recast just for a death scene, just for a couple lines of dialogue?
Well, I mean,
I think
not just that, but I mean,
the whole thing is silly that we never see Osiris lose and now we know why we don't see it on screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now we understand why, because his body was taken over immediately afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that we didn't see that, and we just had to read a lore tab, is actually really aggravating still. This is the greatest, they call him the greatest Guardian that ever lived. And you're going to tell me that we don't get to see that scene?
Yeah.
Everything, as far as I'm concerned, what they can do with seasons is completely, everything is, off the board. I mean, hell, you could even get rid of some of these zones and still bring them back for a seasonal thing, like the Leviathan.
Right.
Like, the Derelict Leviathan is still going to be there for the next 2 seasons until Lightfall. And I wouldn't even be shocked if it became a full-on zone in Lightfall.
Yeah. No, I could.
I would not be shocked if it stuck around. Now, you'd have to give us all the zones at that point, but I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah.
So, with that though, let's head to Lore Corner.
All right, Lore Corner.
Lore Corner. Let's do it.
Lore Corner.
Lore Corner. Yes. Okay. So the first one comes out of Voices of the Haunted. They finally put stuff in the API. I can finally read from these. I'm so excited. To forgive or forget. Neek tells me you have a question in need of an answer, Mithrax begins. Please sit. Amanda nods as she pulls up a folding chair next to the fire. She hadn't been back to the Elixni Quarter since the Vex invasion. The light from the flames casts flickering shadows across the building's cracked concrete and exposed rebar. Yeah, Amanda says quietly. It's about Saint, sort of. She takes a deep breath before continuing. Everyone in the last city knows the stories. Hell, we used to call him Kellbreaker, and she stammers, avoiding the name. I've heard what your people used to call him, too. Mithrax hums a gruff assent as he settles into his own chair. Sorry, not assessment. Amanda wrings her hands together. How did you all forgive him? Her voice sounds small, but her words pierce the cool night air. Not all of us did, Mithrax replies solemnly. To this day, there are some in House Light who avoid him. Those who lost loved ones to his rage. Though he would give his life to protect them, nothing he can do will ever erase their pain. So they'll just go on hating him forever? Mithrax exhales deeply into his rebreather. One cannot choose who forgives them and who does not, he answers. That is the decision of those who were wronged. A choice each must make for themselves. Amanda nods to herself. Was afraid you'd say something like that, she remarks sadly. As she gets up to leave, she turns to Mithrax one last time. What made you forgive Saint? The Kell of Light leans back in his chair and stares into the fire like he is looking for something amid the ashes. Because, he says quietly, I want to be forgiven too. So this is pretty poignantly dealing with Amanda's feelings towards finding out that Crow is actually Uldren.
Right.
Everybody knows now after Savathun's little revelations. And she feels hurt by this. Crow had become her friend. They were becoming pals and laughing and telling jokes together. And then she found out that he's the guy who actually murdered Cayde. And for Amanda, I feel like, I mean, you're having to look at the face of the person who killed one of your close friends. I never got the impression that Cayde and Amanda were friends, but okay. We'll suspend disbelief here.
There's the one scene in in Taken King where he's like asking her to fix Eris's ship so they can go, right? And they have a little banter there, but that's like really the only time you see them together.
It's really surface level. I mean, like even in the lore, there's just not a whole lot there.
Yeah.
And it's like she is just like torn up about this. Like I would expect Ikora or Zavala to be upset because we actually saw their reactions.
Mm-hmm.
But it just feels really surface level for it to be her. I do like that they've been expanding upon that though, and that they are really leaning into no, they were great friends, because I think that gives this some emotional weight, because everybody else is pretty desensitized to Crow now and is like, yeah, no, this guy's great. He makes some really stupid decisions, but he's great. I'm glad he's on our side.
Yeah.
And this season, I really hope this is the final season of anybody reckoning with who Crow used to be as Uldren, because it's very clear that they are not the same man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
On that, we have another side of the token though. With our next lore piece, Without Remorse, this season's seasonal shotgun. How could I possibly be his ghost after all Uldren has done? It's a question I've been asked before. Most ghosts don't know who their guardians used to be. That's obviously not true in my case. My guardian was laid to rest under a shroud in the Dreaming City. Even if I didn't recognize his face, I would have put two and two together. Honestly, sometimes I even wonder if he figured it out before he spoke to Savathun. If what she showed him just confirmed what he already suspected. The thing is, I know a lot more about Crow than Savathun ever did. I know the smirk on his face when he pulls off something impossible. The way he flips his knife before throwing it. Even the way he averts his eyes when someone praises him. And sometimes, I wonder if Uldren shared any of these traits, his habits. Maybe. It's impossible for me to say for certain, but it doesn't really matter. Because I know that my guardian only takes risks when they are necessary, not for the thrill of it. He celebrates others' victories, not their losses. Everything he does is for someone else's benefit. He is humble. He is kind. That is who he really is. And it's up to me to remind him, because Crow is my guardian, not Uldren. You know, you can kind of tell that he had started putting two and two together.
Yeah.
When we even meet him, because I always think back to the lore tab about the Titan who sees him and just mutilates him.
Right.
Absolutely just spends time murdering him time and time and time again every time he's rest. To the point where Glint eventually won't do it. And Glint waits until they leave and then brings him back and helps him heal. And Uldren just basically says, why? Why do they hate me so much? And Glint tried to keep the truth from him and, he asked us not to tell him and this and that. We know Savathun told him, but Crow is a very smart individual. There's almost no way he didn't know or at least suspect something. I think if Mara had been in the story more, it would have been found out much earlier. But there's no way somebody didn't just pop off and say something. I suspect Spider said something at some point.
Yeah.
I mean, God, you talk about people that we still have to reckon with. Spider at some point.
Yeah. I keep forgetting that Spider exists, which I think might be the point when he shows up. You're like, oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, we know he's in the Last City now, but I suspect that he'll be part of Mithrax's story, which I really hope is next season. But that's beside the point. This shows two different things. Glint never hesitated to believe that Uldren was a good person.
Yeah.
Or that Crow is a good person, I guess I should say, not Uldren. This particular dialogue from Glint just reinforces for me that they are going to make Uldren Crow. God, now I'm doing it because we just read 2 war tabs about Uldren. Reinforces for me that Crow is either destined to be the new Hunter Vanguard or ultimately the next speaker, the first real speaker.
Mm-hmm.
They can't afford Bill Nighy back, but they can get Brendan O'Neill to record more dialogue. That's kind of how I feel like this is going. And as much as I like the character development that we've seen with Crow and with Glint, I'm a little upset that some of this is being relegated to the lore tabs where just so many people aren't going to see this. This is something that I feel like could have made for a good cutscene. But if every tab that I wanted made into even a sketched out cutscene was made into it, Bungie would need to triple their cinematic staff and increase their budget tenfold.
Do it.
So maybe it's a good thing that I'm not in charge of budget planning for what gets made into a cutscene. And what
I will
doesn't.
buy an extra cosmetic from Eververse.
Yeah, I will buy 1 extra cosmetic a season if you do this, Bungie. I will personally fund 1 hour of labor. I think that we're getting towards the end of, okay, Uldren, Crow. Crow needs to go away for a little bit. I really like him, but really the last year and a half, almost 2 years now, really since Beyond Light came out, has been the Crow story in seasons. The only exception, really, or at least he's been a major player in every season, with the exception of Splicer. That's the only season where he hasn't been a major player, and even then he was still in the background enough. To the point that I was very surprised he didn't show up in the final cutscene where everybody's defending the Elixni.
Yeah.
But he was our vendor in Hunt. He was Zavala's bodyguard in Chosen, as well as starting to work with Saladin on field operations. He's an operative in the Batsa district during Splicer. During Lost is when he finds out the truth of who he was before he was resurrected, that he's Mara's sister, all this and that, and he specifically asks to be removed and put with Cayde. He specifically asks to be the envoy there with Saladin. And then, of course, we all know what happened in Season of the Risen when Saladin had to forfeit himself to make sure that Crow was not killed.
Right.
There are just so many moving pieces right now. Like, it's very clear that he is one of the futures, if not the future of the franchise. He is destined to be the character that you fall in love with, and I think if you keep overusing him the way that they have, that's going to push more people away than actually get them to be sympathetic. Like, people that I previously saw were like, oh man, I'm all in on Crow's story. Risen kind of rubbed them the wrong way with just how rapidly things went downhill there in like a 3-week span. And then this season, there's like, oh my god, it's more of Crow moping. It's like, no, him getting rid of his demons is actually super important. You know, we went through Eris's whole quest line for Xenophage, we forget. And that conquering, you know, we conquer our own nightmares and our own failures during Shadowkeep, but we're really doing it representative of all the Guardians, right? Because you fight Crota, and that's when, you know, hundreds of Guardians died on the moon to Crota. Gaul with the Red War, and then oh god, who's the other main nightmare weaver? The Fanatic. The Fanatic is running around, and you know, that's the murder of Cayde that we weren't able to prevent. That one feels like the more personal one to me.
Yeah.
But you have all three of those as your nightmares. You know, Eris has her fire team that haunts her. Crow had Uldren. And we've been working on exercising everyone's demons and overcoming the trauma. And there's no better character currently in games, I don't think, than Crow for being representative of the idea that you are not your past. You aren't that. Your past decisions do not define you.
Right.
So I'm excited to see where they take Crow's story. I am ready for a Crow break, though, and I think that's where they got to be headed. Bring him back as a major player in the actual next expansion.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, give him the next 2 seasons off, explore other areas of the story, maybe minor ones, maybe something that has to do with someone else, and then when Lightfall kicks off, maybe he's like the main focal point of the story, or like one of them, you know. So,
I agree. I think it's high time that we brought him in to be a main player in the actual storyline. And like, on a side note, like, hey, if Eris makes it out of the next couple of seasons, can we give her Finch as a ghost?
Yeah,
please.
I mean, that would make the most sense.